Welcome back to Rick's Scale Model Fix and part 6 of Kinetic's 1/48 scale Harrier Gr3 build. And in this episode of the videos we're going to be looking at applying the markings or the decals to the model. So this is the most sort of interesting bit of the build as far as I'm concerned, as it's where the aircraft and your model starts taking on its identity, and it also marks a major milestone in the build process. There are a number of marking options in the kit, some of which cover the same aircraft, as can be seen in this case with Harrier Gr1 XV788. On the left hand side there we've got dated RAF Wittering 1970, and it's got the red, white and blue roundels of the early type. And then on the right hand page we've got the same airframe, again dated 1970, but the roundels changed to the two colour red and blue. Turning the page, we've got early Harrier Gr3 without the laser nose, and this is XV795, the Intruder, again number 1 squadron, and this is dated Belize 1975. And on the opposite page, quite striking example with a shark mouth, we've got Harrier Gr3, again without the laser nose, of XV782 hot to trot, again in Belize 1975. At this point it's where the colour scheme changed to wrap round dark sea grey and dark green instead of dark sea grey, dark green and light aircraft grey undersides. So you got a choice of the two camouflage patterns that the aircraft wore. Moving on to later service life Harriers, and we've got Harrier Gr3 XV760 of 233 OCU Wittering 1977, and this one is labelled as having the first Gr3 variant with the laser nose and the radar warning receiver unit in the tail. Just to call out on the profile there, it does show the bulge under the nose. That wasn't fitted to this aircraft, and they were only fitted to operational aircraft in the Falklands conflict later on. Talking of Falklands conflict, we've got Harrier XZ997, Operation Corporate Hermes 82, and that does have the bulge under the nose, and that's in dark green and dark grey, wrap round camouflage. Just a quick one, noticing on the aid and gun pods that on the earlier aircraft the camouflage extends over the gun pod, where on XZ997 it doesn't, the gun pod is dark green. And making up the remainder of the profiles is again XZ997, this time later on and towards its end of service life in 1992, based in Germany, RAF Gütersloh. And again, it's interesting to note that the profile does show the bulge under the nose, which it shouldn't do. So again, wrap round, interesting colour sort of patterns and break up there to the drop tank, which will add a little bit of interest, as it is on the Falklands one as well, where it was roughly applied Oxford blue, I would imagine in an attempt to tone down the light aircraft grey perhaps. So all in all, an interesting set of markings to cover pretty much most of the operational camouflage schemes that the Harrier Gr1 and Gr3 carried. Turning our attention to the decal sheet, it's of aftermarket quality, printed by Cartograph, designed by Cross Delta. It's superbly printed, it's got a good mix of stenciling for the airframe, even down to things for the aid and gun pods and stuff like that, so should keep you busy for a while adding all the stencil data. It's interesting to note that the number decals are split up, so you'll just need to chop and change those round to cover the aircraft that you're modelling. Nice selection of roundels. It's a nice touch as well from the decal sheet designer that where the roundel on the side of the airframe goes over the intake, the auxiliary intake door in the open position, pieces are supplied separately to decal that door. Saves the very nervous cutting of a complete decal to go over the apertures, otherwise if you're supplied as a whole item. So these should present no problems in their application, and I'm looking forward to using those. Should you want to be a bit more individual with your aircraft and want to steer away from the kit markings, then Extra Decal by Hannants do a couple of sheets, X48211, which is the earlier GR1/3s without the laser nose, offering quite a large selection of aircraft on this sheet, quite reasonably priced. So just get these out. So we've got some just a little bit more interesting, perhaps winter camouflaged example, and some of the machines that aren't necessarily covered on the kit decal sheet. For example, there's a 3 squadron aircraft there as well. So maybe something to consider if you want to be a little bit more sort of individual, but it might be worth doing some research and finding out the fit that these aircraft carried in relation to what you're building, and cross-referencing that with the call-outs in the kit instruction sheet to make sure you're making an accurate representation. The decal sheet itself doesn't say who it's printed by, but it's usually microscale. Looks to be superb as always. I've used Extra Decals in the past and they've never really caused me any issues. If you're building a GR3, then Extra Decal sheet 48212 may be of interest to you, as this covers later airframes. We've got a number of standard wrap round dark green, dark sea grey, and then some of the more experimental ones down at the bottom, Operation Match Coat, which was in medium sea grey under surfaces and dark sea grey upper surfaces. We've got exercise markings applied, white tail, and the red tailed one from 3 Squadron, and the lichen green and NATO green, such as the early Harrier Gr3 colour scheme there as well. And we've got a 4 Squadron one in light aircraft grey, dark green and dark sea grey as well. So carrying a various amount of camouflage. I think we've got probably every Harrier camouflage scheme covered. And again, the decal sheet doesn't say who it's printed by. I'm assuming it's microscale as the other sheet, and it looks to be perfect. So we're just starting off adding the decals to the kit, so I just thought we'd cover some of the things that I will be using. So prior to decal application, the model has been given a coat of Johnson's clear floor polish. This has just been added on top of the Guns clear coat gloss that we added at the end of the painting stages. The reason I like this is some of the setting solutions that are used to help bed the decals down actually react with the clear and make it slightly softer, so that it draws the decal into the surface of the varnish, which is quite a benefit, as you'll see. There are various decal setting solutions on the market, and while these pretty much do the same job, in which help the decal stick to the model surface. So we've got Tamiya Mark Fit, probably the most well-known one, microscale set, and Sol. This one's the Sol. And my preferred brand, which is Deco Red or Strong version. This is really strong and can destroy some decals, so it's always worth trying just a test area first. And this is available in 3 strengths, green, yellow and red, weak, medium and strong. A couple of tools. We've got a clean paintbrush that's never been used for anything else, a pair of tweezers, knife blade, some cotton buds and a clean dish. And I have a coffee cup warmer there with some warm water. So we've done quite a bit of work just off camera just to get the decals on. So the upper surface markings have been applied, and I don't know if the camera will pick this up, but we'll try. So on the roundel there, as you can see, the setting solution has reacted with the decal and the Johnson's clear floor polish, and it's actually dragged the decal down into the rivet detail on the wing. We'll just move it in the light, you might be able to see that. So it does look more or less painted on. So good quality decals will always work well with the engraved detail. We've worked around the model, adding the decals, and it's starting to come to life now. That multi-part decal for the roundel for the intake has worked well, with all the separate bits being added to the intake doors. So we're just going to start adding some decals to this starboard side of the kit, and the first thing I'm going to do is just with a clean brand new pipette is just add a bit of decal setting solution to the dish. This stops any contamination into the bottle of setting solution, also less inclined to knock it over. So we're going to add the intake roundel on the starboard side. So I'm just going to remove this using a knife from the decal sheet. Just move that out the way because you don't want to get that wet. Getting a pair of tweezers, we're just going to dip this in the warm water. Just about 20-30 seconds. It's good to use warm water as it makes the decal a little bit more pliable, and it also softens the adhesive a bit easier. And then we're going to find the location in the kit, which is this blow-in door near the intake. And we're just going to moisten the area with a bit of water, and then we're going to slide the decal into place. So whilst it's lubricated with the water, it's quite easy just using the tweezers to nudge and align the decal in the correct manner, that the decal's lined up. We're going to use a cotton bud in a rolling motion just to remove any excess water. Try and work it from the centre of the decal to the edges, making sure that the marking doesn't move or wrinkle up. And with the excess water removed, we can just check to make sure we've got this in alignment. It is just slightly out there. And once we're completely happy that we are aligned, you can add your decal setting solution. So just with a paintbrush, a small amount, and we're just going to paint that over the decal. And then we're just going to leave that alone. So whilst that decal on the intake is bedding down, we're just going to add another one. So pick an area where you're not going to catch yours, touch this one. So we're going to add, we'll add this black step marking line, and maybe that one as well, just while we're waiting for that. So we're going to the decal sheet and we're looking for number 11, which is the shorter of the two. As you can see, this decal sheet has got wet and everything has moved, so we'll put that back out of harm's way. And we're just keeping an eye on this decal just to make sure we're not getting any adverse reaction to that setting solution. just double checking the location area of that. So it is the second one, second step along, go up to the canopy sill. Sort of like that. Just constantly referring, it's not quite a straight line, and it does come down to the inner step. And then we're going to add number 10 as well. So just removing the excess water from that. And again, keep the desk dry. And just again keeping an eye on our decal. It's just starting to wrinkle up. That's normal. So try your hardest not to touch it. And then we can add this one. To the model as well. Just removing the water out. Now, because we've put a gloss coat down, it minimises what's called silvering, which is air trapped under the clear carrier film, and it can be seen as a silver sort of bubble underneath the decal carrier film. So we're just going to have a look at this roundel now, and just for camera we're just going to ease it and tease it into place. So it sort of melts, the setting solution melts the decal and it becomes pliable. And I'm just making sure that the carrier film round the cutout for the door has bent round into the correct location. And then we can just roll very, very carefully to make sure that the decal is in correct position. Which it is, and we're just going to add a little bit more setting solution to this edge because it's got to confirm to the intake, which it's starting to do. And if I just pop you back round to the other side, you can actually see there where the decal, under the action of the setting solution, has bedded itself down into the sort of forepart of the recess for the intake there quite nicely. So it's all about patience and not rushing, which is not good for when you're trying to demonstrate it on camera, because you don't want to wait an hour while you see the results. So I'm just trying to tease it with a brush with a bit more solution there, but I think I shall just leave that now and let the setting solution do its job. So constantly referring back to the instruction book, and now we want decal 14. Which is the ejector seat warning triangle. Should be in the similar locations there. So returning to our decal on the intake, we're now going to add these segments in to complete the decal process for this area. So as I said in the introduction, it's quite nice that Kinetic provide, or the decal designer provided, segments, because it makes it a lot easier than trying to cut that decal once it's been applied, like you would have to do with the extra decals. It's just only going to end up in tears, really. So we're just going to add the lower auxiliary intake door part. And this should just simply fall in place on the correct area. Like so, just to make up that complete portion of the roundel. Just checking that it is perfectly in place, which it is. Then we're just going to roll it. And then we're going to add the section to the auxiliary door that's open in its entirety. Again, it doesn't take long in that water. Thing like that. So I'm just lining it up best I can and trying to allow a tiny little bit of an overlap, so that when I do add the setting solution, it makes the very very edge of the red just overlap slightly, otherwise we're going to have a slight green section. Making sure it's straight. So we have got a little overlap there. We're going to leave that now for the setting solution to work, and we're just going to finish off with the top door. So again, just a quick dip in the warm water. Before we add this in place again, just making sure we're really careful with our alignment and everything looks right when we've done it. As once that decal solution has started biting, there's very little chance of recovery. So what you'll notice I'm doing there is I'm just teasing the edge of the red as it goes over that joint, over the edge of the decal. And what that means is that we've got no boundary between the decal and the paintwork, so it looks as though it is meant to be there. So just comparing it to that side to make sure we have got everything right, and that's quite a neat result. So I'm just giving the decal just a final coat of setting solution, and we're just going to leave it there, and I'm just going to put some setting solution on these areas that we worked on. So join me back at the cutting mat when I've completed the decaling process, and we'll have a look at the finished results. So after a few hours sat at the bench, the decals are now on the entire airframe. It's starting to look the part. We've still got a considerable amount of work to do to complete the Harrier. Once the decals have dried and sealed in fully with another coat of Johnson's Clear, the tension of the build in the next part of the video will look at adding the massive amount of smaller detail parts that we've accumulated during the course of the build. So we've got things like the undercarriage and the canopy, weaponry, pylons, etc. to add to complete the build. And then also we need to start thinking about some weathering, perhaps a panel line wash and things like that. So until next time, please look after yourself, stay well, take care.